Dust from Muhammad Ali's Cadillac was still drifting through the air when Earl Miller realized that the most famous face in America was walking toward his restaurant. Miller's hand instinctively reached under the counter for the baseball bat, but in the next 25 minutes, no weapon would be needed. Words alone would be enough, and once those words were spoken, a sign that had hung shamefully in Miller's restaurant window for 23 years would be torn down forever, and a hatred that had survived generations would end with a single question no one had ever dared to ask. The question Ali asked Earl Miller on that sweltering Georgia afternoon didn't just change the heart and mind of a racist. It revealed the true secret to winning the most important battles in life. Victories measured not by knockouts, but by the courage to smash through the walls built around our own taboos. July 18th, 1974. Heat shimmered over Highway 27 in rural Georgia, wavering above the asphalt like dancing ghosts. Muhammad Ali's black Cadillac cut through the summer air, carrying the newly crowned heavyweight champion and his team toward a speaking engagement in Atlanta. 3 months earlier, Ali had stunned the world by defeating the seemingly invincible George Foreman in Kinshasa, Zaire. At 32, he had reclaimed his belt with pure cunning, letting the young and powerful Foreman punch himself into exhaustion with the rope-a-dope strategy before dropping the thunderous knockout that shook the globe. But in this forgotten corner of Georgia, none of that mattered. "Champ, engines running hot," said Bundini Brown from the passenger seat, pointing at the temperature gauge climbing into the red. Ali squinted through the windshield at the rural scenery. Pine trees, dirt roads, and poverty scattered through the landscape. Far ahead, on the side of the road, sat a small, worn-down building, Miller's Restaurant, its white paint peeled under the relentless southern sun. "Pull over," Ali said, pointing at the restaurant. Howard Bingham, Ali's photographer and closest friend, leaned forward from the back seat. "I don't know about this, Muhammad. The place doesn't look too friendly. Might be a bad idea." But his voice trailed off as they got closer and read the handwritten sign taped inside the window. "Whites only, no colored served." Angelo Dundee, Ali's legendary trainer, flinched. "Come on, champ. Let's find somewhere else. Ain't worth the trouble with people like that." Ali parked the car and stared at the sign for a moment, jaw tightening like it did before stepping into the ring. He clenched his fists, and his eyes took on that focused intensity that had rattled opponents around the world. "Angelo, you know something?" Ali said quietly. "I beat the strongest man in the world. I think I can handle a restaurant in Georgia." Before anyone could protest, Ali stepped out and walked toward Miller's Restaurant with the same determined stride he used when approaching Foreman in that scorching African arena. The bell above the door jingled as Ali entered. Patrons, mostly white, froze mid-bite. Forks hovered halfway to mouths. Conversations died instantly. The only sounds were the faint hum of the fan and the hiss of the grill. Behind the counter stood Earl Miller, mid-50s, sun-worn skin, eyes that had seen too much bitterness and too little hope. His apron bore the stains of 30 years serving the right kind of customers. When he recognized Muhammad Ali, his face flickered between recognition, shock, and finally hardened resolve. "We don't serve your kind," Miller said loudly enough for all to hear. "Signs right there. You can read, can't you?" Silence fell so heavy that the ice melting in sweet tea glasses could almost be heard. A few patrons shifted in their seats. Others leaned forward, hungry for a fight. An elderly couple stood and quietly left, unwilling to watch what was about to unfold. Ali walked toward the counter without breaking eye contact. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the calm authority of a man who had walked out of battles victorious. "I can read just fine, Earl," Ali said, using his name without being told. "I've read a lot, actually. I've read the Constitution of the United States, I've read the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and I've read the Holy Quran, which teaches that all men are brothers no matter their color." Miller's face flushed, but pride kept him steady. "Don't care what you've read. This here's my place, and I got the right to refuse service to whoever I want. Now get on before I call the sheriff, and you won't like what happens after." Ali didn't move. Instead, he did something no one in that restaurant expected. He smiled. Not a mocking smile, not a cruel one, but warm and almost compassionate. "You know who I am, Earl?" "Yeah, I know who you are. You're Cassius Clay." "Not Cassius," Ali corrected gently. "Muhammad Ali. And you're right. I'm a boxer, the heavyweight champion of the world. 3 months ago, I beat George Foreman. a man nobody thought could be beat. I've fought the toughest men alive, and I've won just about every fight I've been in. Miller's hand drifted beneath the counter, toward a bat, or maybe something worse. Tension thickened. What I'm saying, Earl, Ali continued calmly, is that right now, I could walk behind that counter, and there's not a thing you could do to stop me. I could knock you out with one punch, hardest punch you ever felt in your life. I could tear that sign out of your window. I could make you regret every hateful thing you ever said. Whatever weapon Miller had gripped tightened under his hand. But I'm not gonna do that, Ali said, taking another step. And you know why? Miller froze. Because I didn't come here to fight you, Earl. I came to talk to you, and I came to ask you a question. What question? I want to know who taught you to hate and what happened that made you believe it. The question hit Miller like a physical blow. For the first time since Ali walked in, he looked uneasy. His eyes darted around, seeking support from the other customers. My daddy taught me, Miller finally muttered defensively. Taught me colored and whites don't mix. That's just how it is. And who taught your daddy? His daddy, I suppose? And on, Ali said, nodding. 3 generations of Millers, each one teaching the next to hate people they don't know, teaching their sons that skin color matters more than character. Ali leaned casually against the counter. Relaxed now, violence replaced by something far stronger, connection. Let me tell you something from my own life, Earl. When I was 12, somebody stole my bicycle. I was so mad I wanted to find whoever took it and beat them. A white police officer named Joe Martin told me I better learn to fight first, so he taught me how to box. Despite himself, Miller listened. You know what color Joe Martin was, Earl? He was white, the man who changed my life. White. My trainer Angelo, over there, Ali said, nodding toward Dundee by the door. White. Some of my toughest sparring partners. White. Some of my fiercest opponents. White. Ali's voice grew stronger. You know what that taught me? White folks ain't all the same. No more than black folks are all the same. There's good and bad in every color. When I look at you, Earl, I don't see a white man. I see a man, a scared man, with ideas he never questioned. I ain't scared, Miller said, but his voice betrayed him. You're scared, Ali said gently. Scared of change. Scared that treating black people like humans will cost you something. Maybe scared your daddy would be disappointed. Maybe scared customers like these would leave. Maybe scared admitting you were wrong means wasting your life hating people for no reason. Miller swallowed hard. Ali turned to the room. How many of you agree with Earl? How many think that sign in the window is right? Not a hand rose. Shame flickered across faces. A middle-aged woman whispered something under her breath. Earl, even the law says you can't hang that sign anymore. It's 1974. Don't care about the law, Miller muttered, but without conviction. Ali faced him again, and when he spoke, it was with the weight of experience and the wisdom of a man who had confronted himself and won. When I look at that sign, you know what I see? I see weakness dressed up as strength. I see a man hiding behind his daddy's hate because he's too afraid to think for himself. I see someone who could be better, but chooses not to be. Then Ali pulled out a stack of bills and laid them gently on the counter. I want to buy lunch for everyone in this restaurant, he said. Black or white doesn't matter. I want everyone here to eat as equals, because that's what people are. Miller stared at the money like it was poison. I'm not taking your money? Why not? Ali asked. Because I'm black? Funny thing, Earl. I thought money didn't have a color. A few patrons chuckled. The tension cracked like ice. Ali stepped closer, voice low enough for only Miller to hear. One day, Earl, 10 years from now, maybe 20, you'll be an old man. You'll look back on your life and ask yourself what you stood for. Will you be proud that you hung a racist sign in your window? Will you tell your grandkids you refused service to the heavyweight champion of the world because of the color of his skin? Ali paused and let the words sink in. Or will you tell them the day you changed, the day you chose to be better? Miller's hands trembled. Tears welled in his eyes. I don't know how, he whispered. How what? Ali asked softly. How to change. This is all I ever knew. Ali smiled, warm, sincere, full of hope. You start by taking down that sign. For a long moment, Miller didn't move. Then slowly, like dragging chains, he walked around the counter toward the window. Every eye in the room followed as he reached for the sign, tore it down, crumpled it smaller and smaller, and dropped it into the trash. When he turned back, tears streaked his face. I'm sorry, he said, for the sign, for turning people away, for being a hateful man. I'm truly sorry." Ali walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's the bravest thing I've ever seen," Ali said. "And I fought George Foreman." The restaurant erupted into applause. People laughed, cried, and shook their heads in amazement. Bingham snapped photos as fast as his camera allowed, capturing a moment that would long outlive both champions and bigots. "Now," Ali said with a grin, "what's for lunch?" "I'm starving." For the first time in 20 years, Earl Miller smiled. Really smiled, lighter than he'd ever felt, like a burden had fallen from his shoulders. "Coming right up, champ." That afternoon, something unheard of happened at Miller's restaurant. Black and white patrons sat together, ate together, talked together. Children of different colors played outside, while parents discovered they had far more in common than they had imagined. Miller served everyone with warmth and respect, and the hateful sign was nowhere in sight. Before Ali left, Miller pulled him aside. "You changed my life today," Miller said. "Don't expect you to believe me, but you did. I'm gonna be different." "I believe you," Ali said. "And I'll be back." He kept his word. Over the next few years, whenever Ali passed through Georgia, he stopped by. Each time the place felt brighter, friendlier. Miller himself had changed completely. In 1975, he hired his first black employee, a young woman named Sarah, whom he came to love like a daughter. By 1978, half his staff was black, and Miller's restaurant was known throughout the county as a place where everyone was welcome. Miller joined his church's integration efforts. He spoke in schools about the dangers of prejudice. He used his own transformation as an example that even the hardest men could change. In 1980, Earl Miller wrote Muhammad Ali a letter thanking him for knocking sense into him without throwing a single punch. He told Ali he had shared the story of that afternoon with his children and grandchildren dozens of times, calling it the most important day of his life, the day he became a better man. "You taught me strength isn't about hate," he wrote. "It's about the courage to change." When Miller died in 1992, his family reached out to Ali. They told him Miller's proudest memory was the hamburger Ali ate in 1974. Word of what happened at Miller's restaurant spread through Georgia and beyond. Other business owners took down their exclusionary signs. Some did so quietly, ashamed. Others did so boldly, promising dignity for every customer. Ali never bragged about that day. When reporters asked, he only said, "I talked to a man. He did the hard part. He did the hardest part." But the people who were there knew the truth. Muhammad Ali had walked into a place armed only with words, dignity, and faith in human goodness. He faced hatred not with his fists, but with his humanity, and he won a victory greater than any championship belt. He defeated prejudice itself. The building that once housed Miller's restaurant still stands in rural Georgia. It is now a community center open to all. On its wall hangs a plaque that reads, "In 1974, Muhammad Ali taught us here that the strongest weapon against hate is not the fist, but an open heart and goodwill. True strength is not what you can do to someone, but what you can do for them. Because anyone can knock a man down, but lifting a man back up with nothing but words takes a true champion." Muhammad Ali proved you don't need to throw a punch to knock out hate. Sometimes all you need is the courage to ask the right question. And sometimes the greatest victories aren't won by proving you're stronger, but by helping your opponent discover that they were stronger than they ever knew.